أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف المرسلين محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وعلى آله وأصحابه الطيبين الطاهرين البررة الكرام. Dear viewers, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. As I begin in the name of Allah, the most gracious, most merciful, we give Him thanks and praise, we adore and exalt His name. He is good and holy in fullness and perfection. We ask Allah to bestow His peace and blessings upon the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, his household and companions, and all those who follow him on the path of righteousness to the day of judgment. Viewers here in Accra and across the world, and all lovers of the eminent National Chief Imam, I greet you with Islamic greetings of love, peace, and fraternity. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. To begin with, let's all in unison, collectively, be thankful to Almighty Allah for the gift of life and for the gift of good health, taking us through from the beginning of Ramadan until now. We find ourselves in the last part of Ramadan, where we are engaging in the devotion suitable to the last 10 days and the last 10 nights of the month of Ramadan. In my previous presentation, I focused and dedicated time to explaining how important the last 10 days of the month of Ramadan is, the period in which is fixed also the Laylatul Qadr. Laylatul Qadr is what we are still seeking and searching for with all dedication and the joy and expectation that God will meet us, or we will encounter Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala during that night because of the blessings. Our belief is that the gates of heaven are laid open to make God's flow of mercy and blessings, the breath, or if like the dew, of blessings that will continue to arise and blow across the world, requires that we as Muslims will have to position ourselves strategically in order to be recipients of God's blessing. And the most auspicious time for us to be able to do so is the last 10 nights of the month of Ramadan, where we keep our vigil. I also explained to you why all the time it's the night. We talk of the night of power, the last 10 nights of the month of Ramadan. I told you the night is the period most auspicious. So the whole of the universe and creation becomes so still and calm, suitable for a deep reflection or a journey that one can make into the realm of the spirit, to be able to really commune and connect with God. That is the time. And God has, in His own wisdom, made the night so. And that is why the Laylatul Qadr has not been designated as the day of Qadr, but is called the night of Qadr. Why God chose the night for such an event is something for you and I to understand. It carries some mystical understanding, because all that there is in life is not what we see physically. So there's something mystical about the choice of night when the Quran was revealed to the last of the prophets, Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. But even as we dedicate ourselves to devotion, there's one dimension of devotion which is connected with the fast of Ramadan, which is so key, as if it is the gate or the door through which God gives expression to His attribute of compassion. Compassion that reaches the locations of the needy of society. In other words, this kind of practice underlines the humanitarian teaching of Islam and has been made so much associated with the fasting in the month of Ramadan. This kind of doorway to the expression of God's compassion through human action is what we call the Zakatul Fitr. Zakatul Fitr. Zakat is one of the pillars of Islam. But broadly speaking, Zakat, broadly understood in Islamic parlance, is charity. But a charity of a certain kind. A charity of a certain kind. Because it is mandatory, it has been given that name. But it falls within the broader concept of what Islam considers as sadaqah. Sadaqah is the broad concept that represents charity in Islam. Sadaqah. And because zakat itself is a form of sadaqah, is a form of charity intended to address or respond to the needs or the requirements of the needy of society, or to show compassion, is being called sadaqah in that sense, but it's zakat. Zakat is mandatory. Zakat is mandatory. So, but mandatory zakat, we have two levels of the mandatory zakat. The yearly mandatory zakat, which is the duty of the rich whose wealth has developed to hit a threshold, the threshold which we call the nisab. In other words, any rich person whose wealth by means of measure hits the threshold we call the nisab is expected by obligation to give out 2.5% of his wealth to a needy person. That is obligatory, mandatory. Because that is mandatory, if it is not given, it represents a sin or a disobedience, a mark of disobedience to God. So that is the zakat that we already know as a pillar of Islam. But we also have another zakat now, another level of the zakat, also mandatory. And that is why we distinguish zakat from the broad concept of sadaqah, which represents charity in its broad sense. Charity of any kind is sadaqah. Sadaqah, broadly speaking, even to be kind to somebody, to visit somebody who is sick is sadaqah. To greet somebody in salam is sadaqah. To find somebody who is he needs salvation, needs to be saved, getting drowned, to save the person, to save somebody's life is sadaqah. So all those things can be called sadaqah. And then we have the monetary sadaqah. So this zakat, which is mandatory sadaqah, has been given this title. Now when it comes to Ramadan, another form of zakat, sadaqah, has been made mandatory, and because of that, it's been given that title of zakat. And that's Zakatul Fitr, because it is mandatory. In Ramadan, the Prophet ﷺ has told us, Allah has made Zakat al-Fitr an obligation on all Muslims to be given to the poor, so that it will be a purification of our fast from all indecent talks or indecent actions and things that are not appropriate with the spirit of Ramadan. In other words, when we give out zakat, it cleanses and fills in the gap, because in fasting we are supposed to experience the plight of the needy of society. We experience the pangs of hunger. So around the period when we are celebrating, the first thing we can do to give meaning to our fasting and to fulfill the purpose of God in fasting is to give attention to the needs and the requirements of the less fortunate of society. And that is why it's been made obligatory on us. The Quran says to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, "Khuz min amwalihim sadaqah, tutahhiruhum biha wa tuzakkihim wa salli alayhim inna salataka sakanun lahum." Khuz min amwalihim. This is mandatory. This one, it is an enforceable obligation. And so the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam was given the command and given the mandate. Khuz, take. And in the Quran, any command that comes with the expression of an imperative. And so the verb, which is an imperative here, is khuz, and comes from the past tense verb akhaza, ya'khuzu, khuz. So three main sentence patterns, tenses we have in Arabic. We have the perfect, the imperfect, and the imperative. So the perfect tense of the word that we are using here, khuz, is akhaza, he has taken. Ya'khuzu, he is taking. Khuz, which is the imperative, the command, take. And that is the expression that was used to begin this particular text of the Holy Quran. Khuz, take. And the command was to the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In other words, by this command, he was given the mandate. He was given the mandate to take from able Muslims a quantity or a quantum of food to be redistributed to the needy of society. Khuz min amwalihim, take from their wealth. take from their wealth. Khuz min amwalihim sadaqah, a certain quantity of charity. A certain charity, sadaqah. Khuz. So we are talking of zakat here, but in this particular text, it's being described in the broad concept of sadaqah, charity. Khuz min amwalihim sadaqah. Take from their wealth a certain charity. Tutahhiruhum biha, by which you purify them. Wa tuzakkihim, and cleanse them. Purify them and cleanse them. Cleanse their wealth. In other words, whatever remains of the right of others in the wealth of the affluent is an impurity. It's an impurity. So that impurity must be taken away through the act of giving. So once you give out the zakat, then you have taken away that impurity. Now your wealth becomes purified. Khuz min amwalihim sadaqa tutahhiruhum biha, to cleanse them, wa tuzakkihim, and purify them. Wa salli alayhim, and pray for them when that has been done. When you have achieved this, in obedience to Allah, they have given it to you and you have taken it for redistribution. Salli alayhim, pray for them for God's blessing. Inna salataka sakanun lahum, because your prayer for the believers is a means of tranquility and harmony in their lives. And so Zakat al-Fitr has been described, is zakat. And the Prophet ﷺ made it an emphatic sunnah to be taken from the wealthy of the society, or the affluent society, and to be distributed to the needy of society. It is one of the faces of compassion in Islam. It is one of the faces of humanitarian feeling and humanitarian action, or humanitarian response to the needs of the less fortunate of society, to the marginalized, to the discriminated against, to the deprived of society. That's why the Quran says, وَالَّذِينَ فِي أَمْوَالِهِمْ حَقٌّ لِلسَّائِلِ وَالْمَحْرُومِ, and those in whose wealth is a right, لِلسَّائِلِ, for the beggar, وَالْمَحْرُوم, and the one who has been denied the act of begging. In other words, because of his condition and his respectability and his dignity, he is not allowed to come out and beg, and yet he is in a very critical situation. Those are people who have rights in the wealth of the affluent, and giving out zakat is a means by which we purify the wealth. But that purification is translated into an act that shows, that gives expression to God's compassion to those who otherwise have become less fortunate in society. This is the philosophy that underpins Zakat al-Fitr. Zakat al-Fitr must be given before the Eid al-Fitr. He said, whoever gives out Zakat al-Fitr before the Eid, indeed has been given a Zakat al-Fitr from which he will receive the reward. But whoever gives Zakat al-Fitr after the Eid, he has given an ordinary charity. When do we have to give Zakat al-Fitr? Or before I get to that, why do we give Zakat al-Fitr? I have given in broader terms. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, the Zakat al-Fitr has been made obligatory on all Muslims so that it will become طهرة للصائم من اللغو والرفث وطعمة للمساكين. The expression طهرة للصائم من اللغو والرفث وطعمة للمساكين. Zakat al-Fitr has been obligatory so that it shall become طهرة, a cleansing, a washing away of the dirt and stains that otherwise would have spoiled the quality of our fasting. Min al-lagwi, from indecent talks, from all the indecent things that we did, whether deliberately, intentionally, or inadvertently, happened in the process of our fasting, and so therefore affected the quality of our fasting. It says Zakat al-Fitr is supposed to remove those things from it and render it clean and pure for acceptance by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So some of the temptations and indecent things that we did not give attention to and we fell into reduce the quality of our fasting, and to restore the quality we give Zakatul Fitr. طعمة طهرة للصائم من اللغو والرفث وطعمة للمساكين, and this is where the humanitarian concerns come in. وطعمة, and then a feeding. It is supposed to become a feeding or a food. طعمة للمساكين, for the indigent of society. For the indigent of society. But how can we ensure that we are able to feed all these multitudes, numbers? And because of that, the process of giving and the obligation is widespread. So that it says that it's obligatory on every individual Muslim. Every individual Muslim, including the newly born child. Why should we even think about the newly born child? In fact, others have said even the neonate who is in the tummy, which is about 4 months old in the mother's tummy, some other school of thought say that once that child, has received, life has been blown into that particular developing individual in the tummy, then he is a living being, and so therefore zakat must be given on his or her behalf. Why so? The philosophy and the wisdom is to widen the space of collection, the scope of collection is to widen the space of collection in order that we can correspondingly widen the scope of distribution. In other words, we should be able to reach as many people as possible to make them happy. And the Prophet ﷺ has said, "Ughnuhum an su'al hadha al-yawm." That is one other reason. Apart from being a feeding, he said it must also be a source of joy and a restraint from the needy from begging. In other words, restrain all the needy people from begging on this day. That is on the day of Eid al-Fitr. If it were possible, let's not see a single person begging on the day of Eid al-Fitr. That's what the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In other words, the Eid al-Fitr is a day of joy that must be shared by every single person without discrimination in the Muslim community. Begging is demeaning. Begging takes away dignity. Begging takes away confidence. Begging to some people is a pain. Can you imagine how when you are lowered to a level that you just have to come out and stretch your hand and beg before you can find something to eat? It's really a trial in the life of any person who begs. But it says that on that day, offer them dignity. Provide them in a very dignified manner. Let them not step out on the street and the road and stretch their hands in begging. Make them honorable people. Restore them on that day. Make them happy. Share with them the joy. And so the Prophet says, "Ughnuhum an su'al hadha al-yawm." Ughnuhum an su'al hadha al-yawm. Make them sufficient enough not to beg on this day. Make them rich enough. Enrich them on this day. Ughnuhum, enrich them. Provide for them sufficiently that they will be restrained from begging on this day. That is a mark of love. That is a mark of respect. That of a mark of fellow feeling. That is sympathy. That is empathy. That is love. That is care for the needy. Caring for the needy occupies a very important place in Islam. Allah describes it like traveling the steep slope. In other words, it's not easy to give. Don't you read the Quran in Surah Al-Balad? It says that وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْعَقَبَةُ فَكُّ رَقَبَةٍ أَوْ إِطْعَامٌ فِي يَوْمٍ ذِي مَسْغَبَةٍ يَتِيمًا ذَا مَقْرَبَةٍ أَوْ مِسْكِينًا ذَا مَتْرَبَةٍ ثم كان من الذين آمنوا وتواصوا بالصبر وتواصوا بالمرحمة أولئك أصحاب الميمنة. He said, فَلَقْتَحَمَ الْعَقَبَةِ. With that, wishing that the believing person would have taken to the steep slope, like a cliff. When you are going up a cliff, you know how when it's so steep, how can you walk about on it? Giving charity is being described. Walking on the path of kindness of Allah is described as walking the steep slope. So, he has embraced the steep slope for Lektahamal Aqaba. But the mystery of this walking along the steep slope cannot be understood by every person who is ordinary. You must understand the mystery behind it. So Allah asked the question, وَمَا أَدْرَاكَ مَا الْأَقَبَةِ? What is it that will give you the understanding of what Aqaba? فَكُّ رَقَبَةِ, said, freeing the slave. أَوْ إِطْعَامٌ فِي يَوْمٍ ذِي مَسْغَبَةِ, or giving a feeding to the needy, fi yawmin, in a day, zi masgaba, where there is fast, there is hunger, a day of hunger, you know, like during the COVID time, when people could not go out to work and they were feeling hungry. And the Quran says, look, our humanitarian concern, to be godly is to be kind to humanity, to be godly, and this we give the fullest expression of this human feeling in the end of Ramadan when we give Zakatul Fitr. أغنوهم عن سؤال هذا اليوم أو إطعام في يوم ذي مسغبة يتيما ذا مقربة, or an orphan who is next of kin to you, أو مسكين ذا متربة, or the indigent who is covered by dust, the indigent, the beggar who lies on the roadside covered by dust, أو ذا متربة ثم كان من الذين آمنوا, then also he also happens to be part of those who believe in Allah. كان من الذين, he is of those who believe in Allah. وتواصوا بالصبر, those who enjoin each other with patience. وتواصوا بالمرحمة, and also who enjoin each other to engage in merciful and compassionate things towards the needy of society. أولئك أصحاب الميمنة, these are the people of the right hand of God. Those أولئك أصحاب الميمنة, those who will be put on the right hand side of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to give this expression and to really give the strongest expression of this compassion, no period is most auspicious the month of Ramadan. That's why the hadith said, كان رسول صلى الله عليه وسلم جواد وكان أجود ما يكون في رمضان. The Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam used to be generous. He was so generous, but he was even more generous, most generous in the month of Ramadan. Most generous in the month of Ramadan. Zakat al-Fitr is generosity, is charity, is love, is care, is sympathy, is empathy. Focus, targeted at the needy of society. Let them not beg on that day. And that is why when we are given the minimum of it, the minimum of Zakat al-Fitr is to give what we call 1 sa of the staple food of the area. 1 sa. Sa is an Arabic word. Sa, S-A-A, is Arabic. Sa. And on what form? So the sa is a measure. Sa is a measure of food, of grains that we give per head. Per head, every single Muslim. Now, able Muslims who have people under their care, they will have to give Zakat al-Fitr on their behalf. So if you are a man, you are the head of a family, you have 4 wives. Each of your 4 wives, each of them represent a head, and you will have to give Zakat al-Fitr on their behalf. If you have 20 children, all those 20 children, you have to give on their behalf. If your wife is pregnant, all your 4 wives are pregnant, each of the children in the tummy, you have to give on their behalf. If they are born today, that one there's difference of opinion along school of thought. But like I said, others have said that once the pregnancy is 4 months, it means life has been blown into the child and you pay. Because the wisdom is to collect more of the food so that we reach out to more people in terms of distribution. That is the wisdom. If you have workers under you who do not have, if you have poor people under you who depend on you, you pay for you give the Zakat al-Fitr. Every person is given. There's no discrimination in gender. Males will give Zakat al-Fitr. Females will give Zakat al-Fitr. The rich will give Zakat al-Fitr. The poor will give Zakat al-Fitr. The poor who is under another person will have to be paid for. But the poor people are the recipient of the Zakat al-Fitr. That's why I say, أغنوهم عن السؤال هذا اليوم. Provide for them sufficiently that this day they will not beg. Make them happy on this day. Restrain them from begging on this day. So all the needy of society qualify to be given Zakatul Fitr. But that sir, if you don't know what it is, 4 moods. 4 moods. In Hausa here we call it mudu. Mudu is an item of measure. It's an item of measure. 4 of the moods constitute 1 sa. 4 of the moods, mudun nabi, constitute 1 sa. So if you're able to get the 1 sa, it means 4 of the moods represent what you can give to 1 person. 4 moods per head, but 1 sa per head. 4 moods makes 1 sa. In other words, if you break down 1 sa, you get 4 moods. Mudu hudu, for each head. That's what we give. But that is the minimum measure you can give. It is given, that one is the minimum. That the lowest you can give is the 4 moods. The upper measure has not been determined. So, if you give 4 moods of uncooked rice to a poor person, and he doesn't have oil, he doesn't have meat, no salt, he doesn't even want to make fire, what have you done? You have not made him happy. So from this lowest measure, you look at the circumstance of the person, because it's humanitarian. It is the time to put smiles on the face of the needy of society. So when you give out Zakat al-Fitr and you give it so empty like that, you may even worsen the plight of the recipient. So when you have noticed that somebody has already given rice and you come with yours, and you think that he already has rice, you can quantify it in monetary terms so that you can give him a quantity of money when he adds to the rice, or when you come to give the rice on your own, you go the extra mile and add some amount of money for him to be able to buy some oil, some condiments, and some other meat to be able to prepare nice food on that day and put smiles on himself and his children and his total family. That is what makes Zakat al-Fitr meaningful. That is what makes Zakat al-Fitr. That's why the Prophet made it clear. The principle was made clear. طُهْرَةً لِلصَّائِمِ مِنَ اللَّغْوِ وَالرَّفَثِ وَطُعْمَةً لِلْمَسَاكِينِ. طُعْمَةً, a feeding. So when you give a feeding of raw rice that cannot be eaten, you have not fed. So I want us to go to the principle and philosophy and wisdom, not just the literal explanation that has been given. That is, we ask that we give just 4 mut or 1 sa. So it is a duty for the wealthy to study the circumstance of the needy of society as surrounding us, and to give out something that truly makes the needy person happy on that day. Zakat al-Fitr is important for us. It's charity. It represents one domain of Islamic charity, Islamic humanitarian response, Islamic humanitarianism. We build on the spirit of fasting, where our hearts has been purged of niggardliness, has been purged of selfishness, but the spirit of sacrifice and giving has become so dominant, has been given rise to. And to give that expression, we must show that in society, in social relationships, sacrifice, show love, show sympathy, give empathy, provide for the needy, give care, give attention, give the fullest expression to irhamu man fil ard yarhamukum man fis sama. Show compassion to those on earth. Show compassion to those on earth, and the one in heavens will be compassionate to you. Wa ahsinu inna Allaha yuhibbul muhsinin. Be good and kind, for Allah loves those who are kind and love those who are good. Where does this come from? It comes from the godly spirit of religion, from our faith. It is not enough that you turn your faces to the east, not to the west. ليس البر أن تولوا وجوهكم قبل المشرق والمغرب ولكن البر من آمن بالله والملائكة والنبي وآتى المال على حبه ذوي القربى واليتامى والمساكين وابن السبيل. It is not enough. Righteousness is not enough. In righteousness, it's not enough for you to turn your faces to the east, not to the west. ولكن البر, but righteousness in its true sense, comprehensively, righteousness includes, among other things, ولكن البر من آمن بالله. Bir, it is the attribute of those who believe in Allah. ولكن البر, but righteousness is the attribute, if you like, interpret it that way, of those men, those آمن بالله, believe in Allah. والملائكة, and the angels, والنبيين, and the prophets. وآتى المال على حبه, and give out mal, wealth, على حبه, though he loves it. And those who give out their wealth even though they love the wealth. ذوي القربى, those who are next of kin to them. واليتامى, and the orphans. والمساكين, and the indigent. وابن السبيل, and the wayfarer. أولئك الذين صدقوا, these are those who truly, who have accepted the religion as true. Or these are those who are honest. Who are honest in their expression of faith. And all these teachings which we have been learning all the other months is given the fullest expression in the month of Ramadan when we are told to give Zakatul Fitr. That's why in Zakatul Fitr it's been made obligatory. It's an enforceable law, enforceable obligation. That's why the Prophet ﷺ was told, خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ صَدَقَةً تطهرهم بها وتزكيهم وصل عليهم إن صلاتك سكن لهم. Once it comes in the name of zakat, then the Prophet has been given the mandate and the obligation. خُذْ مِنْ أَمْوَالِهِمْ, take from them. Once it is a command, it means that if you don't give, you have violated the principle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So my dear brothers and sisters, in Ghana here and across the world, this is just to explain to you the wisdom and philosophy of Zakatul Fitr and to encourage you. Difference of opinion, what is the most suitable time to give Zakatul Fitr? There are those who even say that Zakatul Fitr must be given from the very first day of Ramadan. But that one defeats the very purpose. If you begin in the first day of Ramadan, it defeats. If you give it in the middle of Ramadan, it defeats the purpose, the wisdom, the principle. If you give on the first night of the last 10 nights of the Ramadan, it defeats the purpose. Because if you give it very early, it will be consumed. It will be consumed. But then they said the best time to give is a day or two before Eid al-Fitr. Or early morning of the day of Fitr. Before, it must just be in time space before the Eid al-Fitr celebration. But if you give it early morning on day of Fitr, and the person doesn't get anything he will use in cooking, he will not be able to feed himself on that morning. And that's why going according to the jurisprudence of using istislah or masalih al-mursala or istihsan, scholars now go and give an interpretation in fiqh to give preference to giving the zakat al-fitr a day or two before Eid al-Fitr, so that there is enough time for the recipient of zakat al-fitr to prepare himself. If he gets the food, the grains, a day or two, he will be able to now search for where he can get the oil. Or enough time is given for those who have observed that he has the grains, but he doesn't have oil, and somebody may come to his aid and give him oil, so that we give the fullest expression of the Prophet's hadith. provide for them sufficiently that they will not beg on this day. Let them not beg on this day because of their situation of sufficiency. Provide for them enough that they will not beg on this day. Let me end it up here and hope that I have been able to engage you in this reflection, and I pray Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala blesses all of us. May Allah open the doors of blessings to all of us to be able to give Zakatul Fitr. Those who are already wealthy, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, we pray, put your blessings in their wealth. Those who are in need of wealth, we pray the blessings of this last 10 days of Ramadan, open widely for them the doors of your bounties, your fadl. Let it flow into them. Bless our lives. Oh Allah, let the brightness of your nur shine ahead of us. Few days for us to finish Ramadan, so we can keep the quality of our fasting, that nothing comes to spoil the beauty and quality. Assist us with the strength of mind and spirit, so we can journey inside our souls and derive the utmost that makes Ramadan meaningful to life, the transformation we need in our lives, the blessings. Allah, you promise us you open the gates of heaven so that you cause to pour on us the breeze of your compassion and mercy. Make us recipients of your favors. Make us recipients of your grace. Our National Chief Imam just celebrated 103rd year of his life. This is life well fulfilled, well lived, a life so pure, life that has been so impactful and still counting. Come home, I invite you, from United States, from Britain, from Canada, from South Africa, from Asia, from Korea, North and South Korea, Syria, Iraq, Saudi Arabia. Come and visit the Chief Imam now in his house as I speak to you in this hour, and come and see the huge vessels that are boiling with food to be distributed to the needy of society. This man has lived a life well fulfilled. It gives me the expression, a sense of what the Prophet ﷺ, خيركم من طال عمره وحسن عمله. I can see the full picture of this hadith. The grace that Allah has made to the Chief Imam, still impacting on society. Man that has lived full of peace in himself, surrounding him. He exudes blessings and peace. People around him and far beyond are receiving blessings from him. Currently, by public acclamation, he is the icon of peace in our country, well recognized by both Christian clergymen and non-Christian, Muslims and non-Muslims alike. I say with every confidence, the level of reverence the Chief Imam receives from the Christian clergy is huge and greater than that which he receives from Muslim clergymen. Because of his life, they believe in his righteousness. They appreciate his spirituality. Let any violence erupt in this country, and we need a single personality who is needed, that his presence alone, not by word, by presence alone, can douse tension and bring and restore peace. That person is the National Chief Imam. So please, make no politics of the National Chief Imam. In any situation, circumstance of violence that breaks, when Chief Imam is invited to go and assist and douse tension and restore peace, Chief Imam will go, and we will support him to go. So that when there is peace, the cause of the conflict then can now be addressed. But the duty of the Chief Imam is to go there and ensure that there is peace. But he will not be involved in the conflict, but that he will make sure there is peace. And then the cause of the conflict now will be left for those involved now to find a way to resolve it. So that in conflict, we don't spill blood. We don't lose a soul. Chief Imam says, as long as he lives, whatever the situation of conflict, let no life be lost. Let no single drop of blood drop on the surface of our earth. This is the man we are talking about. We pray for the more blessings of his life. More blessings of his life. Pray for long life for him. The longer he lives, the more we drink from the treasure of his wisdom, the fountain of his wisdom. The longer he lives, the more we are blessed. We are those close to him who drink from the fountain of his blessings. As long as he's pleased with us, we hope the chief imam will look at us in the eye and look at us in the eye and tell us, God bless you. Ƙaunanmu shine malam ya kallo mu cikin tsaban idanunmu, ya bude bakinsa lokacin da ya yi farha da mu, ya ce mana Allah ya muku albarka, ya ce mana Allah ya muku albarka. Muna taya malam murna, muna roƙon Allah ya ƙara rayuwarsa albarka. Allahumma inna nas'aluka hudal anbiya wa safa al-asfiya wa salah al-ashqiya wa shawq al-muhibbin wa wusal al-mahbubin وكفاية عنايتك وكفالة ولايتك يا مولاه يا غوصاه يا سيداه يا رباه. ربنا عنك لا تبعدنا، ربنا بقربك شرفنا، ربنا عن بابك لا تطردنا، ربنا بفضلك أغمرنا، ربنا من جودك لا تحرمنا، ربنا لغيرك لا تسلمنا، ومن كل بلاء سلمنا، وببهجة جمال حضرتك متئنا، وبكل كمال كملنا، وعن كل نقص قدسنا. لك لا لغيرك سؤالنا، أنت ملاذنا وإيازنا، هاشاك أن نرجع بالخيبة وأنت الكريم ولك الكرم المطلق، ونحن الفقراء وأنت الغني وبك الغنى المحقق. ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب. اللهم إنا نسألك من العصمة دوامها، ومن النعمة تمامها، ومن الرحمة شمولها، ومن العافية حصولها، ومن العيش أرغده، ومن العمر أسعده، ومن الوقت أطيبه، ومن الرزق أوسعه، ومن الفضل أعظمه، ومن اللطف أنفعه، ومن الإنعام أعمه، ومن الإحسان أتمه. اللهم ربنا كن لنا ولا تكن علينا يا غفار. اللهم ربنا كن لنا ولا تكن علينا يا غفار. اللهم ربنا كن لنا ولا تكن علينا يا غفار برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين يا رب العالمين. اللهم إنك عفو كريم رحيم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم ربنا إنك عفو كريم رحيم تحب العفو فاعف عنا. اللهم ربنا إنك عفو كريم رحيم تحب العفو فاعف عنا برحمتك يا أرحم الراحمين. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين. والسلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.